The Berserkers are one of the most emblematic figures of Viking culture. They were fierce and ruthless warriors who fought in a frenzied trance, giving them supernatural strength and endurance. According to one theory, the word berserker comes from Old Norse and means bear shirt, as these warriors wore bear skins on the battlefield. Another theory states that it derives from the Germanic bear, meaning bear, which refers to the animal with which they identified themselves. Some berserker also wore wolf skins and were called ulfednar, meaning wolf skin. The furious warriors were descendants of Odin, the god of war, wisdom, and death. They believed Odin bestowed his strength and fury and protected them in combat. Before the battle, the berserker invoked Odin and offered him sacrifices of animals or enemies. These warriors shouted Odin's name during the battle and dedicated their deeds and victims to him. After the war, they thanked Odin for their victory and gave him the spoils and prisoners. Wolf warriors were the most feared and respected warriors in all of Scandinavia. They served as elite troops, bodyguards, or champions of the Viking kings. Their fury caused them to mimic the behavior of wild animals, and it was believed that they could adopt their characteristics or even transform into them. Some legends claim that some berserker turned into a bear or a wolf in the heat of battle. Berserkers were not ordinary warriors but had to meet specific physical and mental requirements to be considered as such. It is believed that trance warriors formed closed groups which underwent initiation rituals, oaths of allegiance, and tests of courage. These rituals could include animal sacrifice, blood consumption, tattooing of sacred symbols, or facing risky or painful situations. The berserker also prepared for battle through rigorous training in martial arts, which allowed them to master weapons such as swords, axes, spears, or hammers. In addition, they practiced breathing techniques, meditation, and self-hypnosis, which were believed to help them enter the berserker trance state. Some historians indicate that Berserk warriors consumed hallucinogenic or poisonous substances, such as Amanita muscaria, ergot, or black henbane, to induce their trance state and increase their resistance to pain and fire. These substances could cause effects such as dilation of the pupils, increased body temperature, altered perception, euphoria, aggressiveness, or insensitivity. However, this theory is not proven, and some experts dismiss it for lack of evidence. The warrior furies were the first to enter combat and the last to retreat. They fought with a blind fury, feeling neither fear nor pain without distinguishing between friend and foe. They used swords, axes, spears, or hammers, but could also use their claws, teeth, and fists. It is said that the berserker could split shields, helmets, and armor with a single blow and pick up stones, logs, or corpses to throw at their rivals. Their mere presence terrified their opponents, who fled in terror or surrendered without a fight. The indomitable fighters had no mercy or compassion and sought only glory and honor in battle. Wolf warriors entered the trance state through a pre-battle ritual, which could include animal sacrifice, blood consumption, tattooing of sacred symbols, or facing risk or pain. During the ritual, these warriors trembled, howled, and foamed at the mouth as they indulged in absolute bloodlust. Once in a trance, the berserker lost all thought and reason and threw themselves into combat with blind fury. The berserker trance lasted until the battle ended or until the warriors were exhausted or died. When the trance ceased, the trance warriors returned to their normal state but felt weak, tired, and depressed. Some suffered severe wounds, which they had ignored during combat and which could cause their death. Others regretted having killed or wounded their comrades or having committed atrocities against their enemies. Berserkers paid a high price for their fury, and many of them ended up alone, insane, or dead. The berserker had a deep devotion to Odin, the lord of Asgard and god of war, which bordered on fanaticism. They believed that Odin bestowed his strength and fury upon them, and that he protected them in combat. Before the battle, the berserker invoked Odin and offered him sacrifices of animals or enemies. The warriors shouted Odin's name during the battle and dedicated their deeds and victims to him. After the war, they thanked Odin for their victory and gave him the spoils and prisoners. The indomitable fighters hoped that Odin would reward them with a place in Valhalla, the Hall of Heroes, where they could continue to fight and drink with him and other fallen warriors. These fighters did not fear death, but desired it, as long as it was with honor and in Odin's name. The bear men also followed other rites and customs related to their faith. For example, it is said that some of them refused to engage in single combat unless the fight was postponed for 3 days to observe Yule, a pagan festival celebrating the winter solstice. Other berserker wore amulets or tattoos with sacred symbols such as Thor's hammer, Odin's raven, or the Valknut, a 3-triangle knot representing heroic death. The berserkers were faithful to their religion but were also intolerant of other beliefs. They opposed Christianity, which spread throughout Scandinavia from the 10th century onwards, and considered it a threat to their culture and identity. Wolf warriors attacked missionaries, converts, and churches and mocked Christian symbols and practices. Some even confronted their kings, who had converted to Christianity and tried to impose it on their subjects. The Berserk warriors are mentioned in several Norse sagas, which are literary works that mix fact and fiction and should be read critically. Some of these sagas are Egil Skallagrimsson's saga narrates the life of a berserker poet and warrior who served King Eric the Bloody and King Athelstan of England. Egil was famous for his strength, courage, cunningness, and rebelliousness. He was also known for his rivalry with King Eric and his son, King Haakon, whom he defied on several occasions. Egil starred in many adventures, battles, duels, love affairs, betrayals, revenge, and miracles. The saga of Hrolfr tells the story of a legendary Danish king and his 12 champions, among whom was Bodvar Bjarki, a berserker warrior who transformed into a bear in combat. Bodvar was the son of a king and a bear, and had a brother named Thorir, also a berserker. Bodvar helped Hrolfr defeat his enemies and accompanied him in his last battle against the Swedish king Adils, where they both died with honor. The saga of the Ynglingos tells the story of the royal dynasty of the Ynglingos, who ruled in Sweden and Norway. According to this saga, the Ynglingos were descendants of Odin, the god of war, and had supernatural powers. Some of them were berserkers, such as King Aun, who sacrificed his sons to Odin to prolong his life; King Egil, who could control snakes; King Agnar, who died fighting a dragon; or King Ivar, who had cartilage bones and was invincible in battle. The Volsung saga tells the story of the Volsung family, descendants of the god Loki, and a wolf. Among the Volsungs were Sigurd, the hero who slew the dragon Fafnir and married the Valkyrie Brunhild; Sigmund, Sigurd's father, who received a magic sword from Odin; and Sinfjotli, Sigmund's son, who was a berserker and a werewolf. The saga narrates the adventures, intrigues, betrayals, and revenge of the Volsungs, who confronted the mighty kings of the Nibelungen land and the Huns. The saga of Njal tells the story of Njal, a wise and peaceful Icelandic farmer, and his friends Gunnar, a brave and noble warrior, and Skarp Hedin, Njal's son, who was a berserker and a poet. The saga narrates the quarrels, feuds, murders, and revenge that ensued between the families of these characters, leading to a civil war in Iceland. The tale shows the complexity and richness of Icelandic society and culture in the Viking Age. Grettir's saga tells the story of Grettir, a berserker warrior who became an outlaw and a hero. Grettir was famous for his strength, courage, wit, and bad luck. Grettir starred in many feats, such as slaying a bear, a troll, a dragger, and a giant. However, he also made many enemies who pursued him and set traps for him. Grettir lived a life of adventure and misfortune until a sorcerer killed him. The saga of Harald the Merciless tells the story of Harald, a Norwegian king who set out to conquer all of Scandinavia and part of Europe. Harold was a berserker warrior who had blonde hair and blue eyes. Harold fought against many kings and jarls and earned the nickname the Merciless for his ruthlessness and ambition. Harold succeeded in unifying Norway and expanded into Denmark, Sweden, England, Ireland, Scotland, France, and Russia. Harold died in the Battle of Stamford Bridge, where he faced the English king Harold Godwinson. The saga of Ragnar Lodbrok tells the story of Ragnar, a legendary Viking king who made numerous raids and conquests in Europe. Ragnar was a berserker warrior who had the nickname Lodbrok, meaning hairy pants, because of the clothing he wore to protect himself from snakes. Ragnar married 3 women, the squire Lagertha, Queen Aslaug, and Princess Thora. Ragnar had many sons, including Bjorn Ironsided, Ivar the Boneless, Sigurd Serpent in the Eye, and Ubba. Ragnar died in Northumbria, where he was captured and thrown into a snake pit by King Aella. The saga of Eric the Red tells the story of Eric, a Viking explorer and settler who founded the first settlement in Greenland. Eric was a berserker warrior nicknamed the Red because of his hair and beard color. Eric was banished from Norway and Iceland for committing several murders. Eric sailed west and discovered a green and fertile land which he called Greenland to attract more settlers. Eric had 4 sons, Leif, Thorvald, Thorstein, and Fridus. Leif was the first to arrive in America, which he named Vinlandia, after the vines he found. The saga of the Greenlanders tells the story of the Viking settlers who lived in Greenland between the 10th and 15th centuries. The saga recounts the expeditions, conflicts, alliances, and conversions of these settlers who had contact with the Native Americans, whom they called Skrællingar. The tale also recounts the adventures of some characters, such as Bjarni Herjolfsson, the first European to sight America, Thorfinn Karlsefni, the first European to found a settlement in America, and Gudrid Thorbjarnardóttir, the first European to give birth in America. The Faroes saga tells the story of the first settlers of the Faroe Islands, who were Vikings from Norway. The saga recounts these settlers' customs, laws, beliefs, and traditions, who organized themselves into an independent republic. The tale also recounts the exploits, rivalries, intrigues, and revenge of some characters, such as Sigmund Brestisson, the first Christian of the islands, Trondur Olwai Gotu, the last pagan of the islands, and Leif Ossersson, the first bishop of the islands. The Berserker peaked between the 9th and 11th centuries, coinciding with the time of the great Viking expeditions. However, from the 12th century onwards, the Berserker began losing prestige and influence. Some factors that contributed to their decline were: the conversion to Christianity of the Norse peoples rejected the worship of Odin and other pagan gods. Christianity promoted values such as peace, forgiveness, and humility, which clashed with the violence, revenge, and pride of the Berserker. The indomitable fighters resisted religious change and were considered heretics, pagans, and demons by the Christians. The consolidation of the Scandinavian kingdoms imposed a stricter legal and social order. Kings and jarls tried to control and limit the power of the bear men, who were seen as a threat to their authority and stability. Some rulers declared berserk warriors outlawed, persecuted, and punished by the judiciary. The evolution of tactics and weapons of war made berserker fury less effective. The enemies of the Vikings learned to defend themselves better against their attacks and to use more sophisticated weapons, such as bows, crossbows, catapults, or armor. The trance warriors who fought without armor and strategy were disadvantaged in the face of these advances and suffered more casualties and defeats. A proliferation of imposters and criminals posed as berserker to commit abuses and crimes. These fake berserkers wore the name and appearance of the real berserkers but lacked their honor and courage. They were dedicated to extorting, robbing, raping, and killing people with no respect for laws or customs. These acts tarnished the wolf warrior's reputation, making them hated and feared by the population. Furious warriors capture the imagination with their unique place in Viking history, known for their ferocity and immense strength. Despite becoming legendary figures for their power and ability to instill terror, these warriors found their practice in disuse. They were eventually banned under the rules of the Christian Church, marking the end of their fighting style in the medieval era.